Hi, it's Mark from Saphrox Studios and welcome to another Logic tutorial. Today's tutorial is going to be focused on templates, what they are, how we make them, and how they can benefit you. So everybody has a completely different take and personal view on how they like to create music. So what I create as a template may not work for you. It's also going to be dependent on what gear you're using, i.e. what outboard, audio interface. All these different functionalities of your specific setup is going to make you work in a different way. But I'm hoping that this video is going to give you a little bit of guidance that you can make your workflow, which may be a term that you've heard people using in various forums and on tutorials, a little bit more streamlined. So, of course, when you open up Logic, if you're using an empty project, you have nothing in there. Let's get this loaded up. There we go. You have nothing in there. So you have to choose if you're going to do a piano track, okay, or a software instrument. So you go create. And if you like to have just a blank channel work, then that's how it's going to go. But you obviously create your piano and you put your piano in. And then you can go away and you can start writing on your piano part, which is all great. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to be just straight in as a muso, having to go and put your engineer's hat on to sort of load up that piano track took you away and out of that creative mode. You can write your creative piano part and then of course you go, oh, I want to put some strings on that or whatever it may be, and you go, okay, so I need to open a new track and I've got to do software instrument, and then I've got to go and choose my string sound, you go studio strings or whatever it may be. I'm just going to go for orchestra, where is it? There we go, orchestral and strings, and I'm going to go, okay, so session strings, and then we've got session strings built up, and then you can go and build that, which, yeah, great. It allows you to do all this, but again, I've hat off, hat on, hat off, hat off, and I hate that. So what I think works best for me is that I build a template that has all of these kind of things laid out as I like. So I'm going to show you my template. We'll talk a bit through what I've done, what you can do for your rig, and then I'm going to go through and show you how you can build it. Okay, so let's go back and we're going to say new from template. I'm going to say close and don't save, and I'm going to click over here, my templates. So I have 4 of them, which I use for different scenarios, and I'm going to go for Saphrox Studios full. So every time I open Logic normally, this is the default rig that opens up. So when I'm being creative, I can simply just get stuck in and know where everything is, and I don't have to worry. My being an engineer is for microseconds, basically. I can click a track and it's ready to go for me. Just hit record and off I go. I can be musical and then I stop it, and if I need to redo it, whatever, I can do that. But obviously the actual stepping out of being the musical creative person hat that I want to wear and prefer to wear, I can stay in it for longer. So let's talk you through what I've got. So I have a piano track at the top. I have a drum track. Now, as you can see, the SoCal producer kit I'm using, and that gives me, with this drop-down menu, all of the functionality of the drum kit with separate, broken out, multi-track capabilities. But in addition to that, unlike the standard producer kit, I have added in an EXS24 sampler in there for additional cymbals. Now, if you want to check out how I've done that, please check out this video here, and it will show you exactly how I've created that all. I can build that into a particular saved instrument setup. So I have it already preloaded in my template. Let's close that up. Then I have my bass tone, and then I've got 2 strings. So I have a modern string setup and a cinema strings where I've already pre-changed the attack to be slow, so I get a nice sweeping in string tone. Then I've got my brass tone set up, and then I have a synth. Now I quite like the Airways synth, and it always sort of makes me laugh as kind of a pad, but it's basically a synth setup which I can go to, which automatically opens up the synth library, so I can go through it and use those. I am not a big synth player. They tend to be like pads, the way that I prefer to use them. I am a guitar player, which you're about to notice now. So basically, I have a sample tank which is there, but then I have the guitar layout. Now, because I like to layer guitars, I like to multi-track guitars and layer guitars, so I have one on the left speaker, one on the right, it's doing the same thing. If I'm doing high gain crunchy tones, I will do something that's a very high gain tone and then a low gain tone, and I'll pan them together. Not pan them, I'll mix them together, pan them sort of variously accordingly. But I want to just keep basically banging the recording out, and I can go to my function. So I obviously have 8 different tracks for guitar here, but really I've actually got 16 because for each one I've doubled up. I use a pod, a Line 6 Pod XT Live, which is my main guitar thing, and the outputs of that I use the balanced outputs which go into my audio interface. Now my audio interface is a Focusrite Sapphire Pro 40. Now this gives me 8 audio ins, 8 audio outs, and then in addition to that there is also the digital IOs of optical and SP diff, etc. Now I have all of my sort of outboard gear wired directly into the back of that. So I'm using my XT left output is going into, what's it going into? It's going into my input 5 on my Sapphire Pro. So you can see that, I'll show that on this screen. So you can see that there is input 5. My inputs, I've got them all various wired up, etc. So it's going in on the XT Live input, which is balanced inputs in. And then I've got the stereo version on the second channel. So if I do want to do a stereo track, I can enable 2 tracks and keep them as 2 separate mono files. Of course, I can do a singular a stereo track if I want to, but I tend not to do that. I tend to record my guitars mono. But of course, because I'm going through a pod, I am going to be using amp simulation and effects simulation, which is part of my creative thing. If I want to do a drive tone, then I'm going to use drive. But because I'm aware that I might choose to produce this later in a slightly different way, I also capture my guitar signal unprocessed. So no amp sims, no effects whatsoever. So with my floorboard, I'm able to have the processed unbalanced signal out, and then through the SP diff I can also capture the unprocessed signal. So I have the unprocessed signal just underneath, which you can see is working on input 9, which is my SP diff. So I can enable both these channels record at the same time. One is a processed sound, one is an unprocessed sound. Now because I like to put one for the left speaker, one for the right speaker, etc., whichever way you can see on the camera, basically I have it pre-panned. So guitar 1 is XT on the left, guitar 2 is XT on the right, pre-panned. Then I've got my 3, 4. So basically I've got, what's that? I've got 4 sets of pairs guitar tracks that I can layer as I want. Of course, if I choose to change my process and I just want a centralized track, I can just change the pan, it's easy. But for my general recording, that's already done for me. Then after that, I have my audio, just plain audio things. So if I want to do mic, if I want to do something a little bit different that's not my normal, I have it there. I don't have to start adding audio channels. And then after that, I have my bass pod. So the same concept I have for my guitar tones, I've actually got a rack mounted bass pod as well, which I can capture my simple bass, guitar going through, and the unprocessed signal in the same way. So this is my usual thing, and it works for me. If we start going through the, obviously I keep my MIDI generally at the top, and then I keep my audio underneath. Again, it separates it, it makes it streamlined for me. So yeah, basically that is my inner workings of how I go about being creative. So if I'm recording a guitar track, I can use the arrow keys and I can just go down and hit record again, I'm ready to go. Arrow keys, hit record again, I'm ready to go. I can build that up exactly as I want, and the switching of hats from being musician to being engineer to being producer is as streamlined as possible. Of course, if I wanted to change the synth sounds, I can go into Airways and I can just change that to something else, and that will preload as I need it. So if I need to add something, fine, I'm happy to do that. But my general setup is that I am doing drums, I'm doing bass, I'm doing guitars, and then I put some synths or some strings on around the back. So yeah, basically that works for me. Reason why you might want to use a template as well is you might have the plans to do an album. And of course, if you're recording an album, you will want to try and get each of those tracks to obviously be individual songs that stand up on their own, but the overall sound of that album, you want to try and create something, and you want it to glue together so it makes sense. I absolutely hate albums which are recorded without that concept in mind. You've got one sound and then it's a very different sound and then it's a very different sound, and it annoys me. It never sort of flows nicely, and I'm always, rather than being immersed in the music, I'm always kind of on the edge listening to someone's work, and I don't like that. I just like enjoying the music. So if you want to create this kind of glued package sound, you're going to try and create similar drum tones, similar bass tones, similar guitar tones for that album, and having a template with all of your kind of setup done, you can then just go and get stuck into your track or tracks. So yeah, basically that's why I prefer to use them, and this is my one. So how did I go about doing it? Well, I'm going to take you back to just using a blank template. So let's close that one up, not save it, and we'll go into new projects. So we've got empty project, choose. So here we go. We have a blank thing. So what I'm going to show you how to do is I'm going to show you how I put in a simple drum track, how I put in a bass track, and then I'm going to put in a couple of guitar tracks, and I'm going to show you how I can choose different inputs on my interface. So let's go for the basic drum track. And of course you might use Drummer. I prefer to use the actual drum sound so I can program the parts myself. So let's go for a blank MIDI thing, open up my library, we'll go down to drum kit, I'm going to go into the producer kits, and I'm going to load up, as you've seen before, SoCal. And there it is. So that's now all ready to go. Then I'm going to go into and put in a bass tone. So where are my bass tones? There we go, bass, and let's go down to thumb bass. So there we go, sorted, nice and simple. And then I want to put in some audio tracks. So let's go in and I'm going to put audio in, and I'm going to say I want the input to be on my XT Live, which is on 5. So there we go, you can create that. And if I am only using one particular thing, I'm just going to put GTR in there for guitar. We can duplicate that, which is fine, and that's all cool. So we've got loads of things that are going to that input file. But say you want to change one of those now, rather than creating lots of things brand new, you can go over to your sort of information strip here with your channel, and you can change your inputs to whichever you want. So I have the 2 inputs that are on the front of my audio interface, and then inputs 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 are on the back, so I can't really access them so easily. So I have everything rewired in there, and because I like to use more inputs, sometimes I have a desk which is separate, which goes into a stereo output on the back in 3 and 4. So we could change that to be there, we can change that to be there. So what did I do? This was guitar 1, this could be desk left, this could be desk right, okay? And if I want to do this for vocals, let's say Vox on the front, and then I want that to go into my input there. So all cool. Now let's say I want to bring up my mixer. So let's bring my mixer over here. And let's say we've brought up the effects which are preloaded in the Logic sounds, etc. But as you can see, we've got a reverb and we've got another reverb. Let's say you like to use delay all the time. So you have a specific delay or a specific reverb. You could go, all right, so let's go and create a new auxiliary channel strip. There we go. We're going to change this so it's operating on bus 5, it's not in operation. And then we can put into that our delay. So let's go and just stick in, I don't know, stereo delay, done. All right. So we don't need to see that just yet, but it's in there. And we put up our fader, and basically if you put in to any of these, bus 5, there we go. Now if we give it a name, I actually call it delay. Can't spell today, delay, there we go. So now on bus 5 is our delay track. All right, so you can have that duplicated in there as you need, accessible for when you want it. Probably going to use the delay in this system, not that I'm actually going to use this system, but I'm going to use it on the vocals. So You can even choose to actually set your sends as you want. You know, lots of options that you can go through, which is good fun. I digress. Basically, that is the rig. You can even put in your panning features as you want. You can save everything you like that. So we now have a system, a setup, okay, that we like the sound of, and yeah, basically now want that to become our main template. So what we do is we go over to File and we say Save as Template, and there's my usual thing. So let's go Logic Tutorial Demo, and I say Save. Good work. So now let's just close this down, and we'll go into New from Template. We'll say Close and don't save. So Logic Tutorial, we go into our Logic Tutorial Demo and we click Choose. And that is all good. Now if you want that to be your main version of opening up all the time, we can go into Preferences and we can go to General, and where are we? There we go. Default templates under the General Project Handling, and you can change that to be the Logic Tutorial, and when you open up that will become your main, but obviously I want it to be my full one. So we're all good. That's basically it. That becomes your main setup for that. You can go through and you can build your music so it glues together as streamlined for your tastes as possible. Obviously, if you're into dance, whatever like that, and you're always using a, I don't know, some sort of 808 kit or whatever, you can go and set that all up exactly how you like it. Or your various synths, you can have your samplers, you can just have everything so you don't have to switch hats. And templates are a wonderful thing. Of course, there's always that possibility that you create a template that you simply don't want. So obviously now we've talked about how you go ahead and build them and why we build them and why we use them, etc. like that. But of course, there's always that possibility that you make something in your trial and error, let's say, and you simply don't want it. You might even call it the wrong name, and you can't change a template's name once you've made it in Logic, which is fine. Yeah, you might just go ahead and create. You've got 2 of them, 3 of them, and you just want to get rid of your old one. I'll show you where you can do that. So simply, we can't do that in Logic. We have to go and do that in the Finder. So I'm just going to bring up the Finder, and here we go. So we have to go, first of all, into our users. So we're going to go into users. We're going to go into your user profile name, and you're going to go into music. So go into music, and you can see we get audio, music, apps. Into music, audio, apps, and you go and find project templates. And there we go. So we can see that there is the Logic Tutorial Demo, which is the one that I've just created. I don't want that in my rig anymore, so I'm simply going to just right click and move that to trash. So now it has gone. So that is simply it. When you reload Logic, you will find New from Template, Close, Don't Save, etc. That's no longer there. So that's how you get rid of them. Of course, if you've got something that you like, you don't want to get rid of it, you just change the name, that's the same place that you would change it as well. It's a bit of a weird one. Go into your users, into your basically music apps, and then you go into your project templates. That's where you can change it, that's where you can delete it. So there we go. That is a Logic template in Logic Pro X. A very, very useful thing to know about that can hopefully streamline your workflow and get you being creative and stop having to switch hats and giving you that kind of stuttery effect in your creative process. I've been Mark, Saphrox Studios. Remember, we have a load more tips and tricks, guys, tutorials, product reviews, etc. on our YouTube channel. So please subscribe. Please give this video a thumbs up. It helps. And if you've got a comment, please leave it in the comments section below. It'd be great to hear from you. Like I say, I've been Mark, Saphrox Studios. See you later.